Hello, and welcome in. Let's talk music. Specifically, the second installment of Buckethead's Pike series, Empty Space. Now, to recap, for those of you asking, what the heck is a pike? I thought it was a fish. No, it's not. It's an album. An album by Buckethead that is about 30 minutes long, where he experiments with a certain sound or musical idea. And these pikes I almost view as if they are a specific ride in the fictional park of Buckethead Land. Last week we touched on It's Alive. There should be a link up in this corner if you would like to click on it and watch it to catch up. I go on a little bit more deep of an explanation of what a pike is. Before we get further into this video, I do want to correct myself because last week I said that there are about 400 pikes. I was wrong. It's double that, 800 pikes. And we are on pike number 2, so we have a long way to go before we even start acknowledging the existence of those 800 plus other pikes. With that correction made, let's get into Empty Space, which we do see touching on the sounds we heard in the previous pike with some metal, a little bit more funk, but we definitely get an expansion on some of the more experimental sounds that we heard in The Hatch, and this time they're beyond more experimental. Basically, imagine The Hatch with the same production quality, the same experimentation, as well as the minimalism of the drums in some portions. But imagine just this raging guitar solo that utilizes some of the most interesting sounds you've ever heard. Some are akin to space lasers, and you'll get Empty Space, because that's what a lot of this album is. On bucketheadpikes.com, this album is described as an exploration of the slab dimensions of the park. I'm not entirely sure what the slab dimension is, but the name of the album is very fitting, and honestly, the beauty of the album is in the empty space within the music. The name of the album being Empty Space is very reminiscent of just that, an empty space. The sounds of this album remind me of what it would be like to be trapped in solitude with just your brain to produce everything around you with these crazy, chaotic sounds. This album once again credits Dan Monti, and he absolutely kills it with this production. I do have some minor complaints about the overall mastering of the album, but the production quality with the experimental noises he's going for and these minimalistic drums is absolutely wonderful. I genuinely can't imagine this production working for anyone the way that it works for Buckethead, and it ends up sounding perfect. Chaotic, but perfect. Talking about the individual songs on this album is going to be just about as hard as it was to comprehend and digest what was happening, but I'm gonna try my hardest. If you'd like to know why it was so hard to digest each individual song, it's because each song actually felt like 5 or 6 different songs thrown into one, and it was constantly rotating which song it was on. It was a great album for people like me with short attention span, but yeah, be warned. The album starts out with Comb and Wattles, which is a great introduction for this album, instantly throwing you into what chaos might ensue with this crazy, what sounds like a car alarm just blaring in your ear with this wow, wow, wow. But immediately after that, we get this funky bass line reminiscent of a video game loading screen in 2000 or 2001. Around the minute 40 mark, we get the first guitar solo of the album, which utilizes this insane micro tapping, which makes way to some great kill switch utilization. Overall, this is a great start and probably my favorite song on the album. And then we get to Wormers, which starts out with this really interesting guitar lick, even with a high-pitched note just randomly thrown in. But it works so well with the guitar riff that's kind of looping at this point of the song. And within 30 seconds, the song has already sped up with a micro tapping solo, only to slow itself back down and get to this beautiful semi-emotional part. With the song being 3.5 minutes, it touches on like 8 different portions with these slow metal breakdowns and this fast-paced metal to end it off. and it's a great reminder of how all over the place this album is going to be. And keep that in mind when we go into our next song. That next song being Empty Space, starting out with this really metal riff, but interrupted by these space laser noises that just go. It's absolutely crazy. Because that space laser, it doesn't just stay on the rhythm guitar. We get a lead guitar which solos throughout the entirety of this song, utilizing that space laser sound as well. And the guitar solo throughout this song feels like it's constantly changing, but overall at its roots, it stays the same. It's the background that's changing, and therefore changing how this guitar solo is being registered. For example, we get these almost awkward moments with minimalist production where the drums feel like they've been reduced by microscopic levels, and these synths that are just gradually working their way up and working their way down in pitch. And the guitar solo over those portions sounds kind of chaotic, unhinged. But then we get to like this crazy metal portion, and it brings that like badassery of the guitar solo right back. This song is by far one of my favorites on the album and definitely stands out, but it's surprisingly not the most standout experimental song on this album. We'll get there, trust me. Up next is Dummy Egg, which is probably the most digestible song on this album for the ordinary listener. The song starts out with this very interesting, almost grunge metal riff, something reminiscent of Alice in Chains, and then eventually makes its way to this slower portion with this echoed and reverberated guitar. Reverberated, is that even a word? It's a reverb guitar lick. It's a rhythm guitar. Wow. I'm figuring Buckethead assumed we might need a break from the guitar solos, considering the last song had one of the most chaotic guitar solos I've heard in my life, because in this song we only get one short and sweet but beautiful guitar solo about a minute and a half in. Overall, there's a lot to love about this song, and it was very reminiscent of some 90s music in my opinion. Up next, we have Pullets, which starts with this amazing slap bass riff and these braggadocious drums, but as you guessed it, that quickly makes way to this awesome metal riff that would just absolutely slay in the pit. And these funk portion and metal portions of this song do return constantly throughout this song, except they're separated from each other by these unique horror, ambient, almost bubbly landscapes. As with many of the songs on this album, there's some awesome guitar work being done in the guitar solos. I'm a really big fan of the first guitar solo that we hear on this song. I think the standout moment for me is toward the end of the song where we get to this funk portion that will be playing fast, and then the tempo will just abruptly slow down, making the funk even heavier. Up next, we get to the song Perch, which starts out with this guitar riff that's very reminiscent of like a haunted circus or some dark, twisted clown tent. We get a section of this song where it sounds like there's this little mouse just squeaking in your ear. It's very, very random. Overall, this song is about 3 minutes and has a lot of experimentation, which I know, you guessed it, crazy, right? About a minute into the song, we get what seems like it's going to be a nice build up for this metal portion of the song, but that just gets immediately interrupted by these very experimental drums, and those experimental drums just lead into too many portions to count, because it's literally changing so quickly. But the last 30 seconds of this song are what stand out the most for me, because we get this beautiful guitar riff with this clean tone, and it's just like a, hey, calm down, everything's okay. I know that I'm just going in your brain with my fingers and giving you the craziest head massage, but hey, you need to calm down. It's what it feels like for me, at least. Up next, we get to the song Hatched, which at first reminded me of something that the Wu-Tang Clan would rap over, with this dark and eerie guitar loop and these drums that are just layered with this FX that's almost muting their impact. effect. But that quickly goes away within like 15 or 20 seconds, as every section on this album has a mandatory rule to be less than 30 seconds long. Let me just say real quick, I know it's not uncommon for a song to switch up every 30 seconds and maybe add something new to the mix or go to a different portion of the song, but on this album, it feels like there's so many unrelated portions that somehow find a way to work together. It's truly genius. Like, if you think about it, it's genius. Anyway, there's a lot of good fun on this one. There's very fun drums, and the production is just so pure, so beautiful. A big shout out to Dan Monty, because the production here is just showing his technique on full display. My favorite moment of the song is probably a minute 15 in, where we get these triplet space laser guitar notes that end up leading into this beautiful solo with just the right amount of echo and delay and reverb. And then we get to Portable Pen, which is surprisingly one of the lesser experimental songs on the album, yet there's still some interesting and experimental choices from both Buckethead and Dan Monty. First off, I want to start by saying the backing instrumental is something similar to what I'd hear from Ween or some interesting experimental modern ska outfit. We get these two really interesting lead guitar sounds, one of them sounding like a jet ski and the other one sounding like a confused chicken running across a assembly line. I don't know. The other one also kind of sounds like a jet ski at times. This album's already thrown so many different things at me that it's gotten so hard to comprehend them as they come at me later. Luckily, we only have like 2 songs left, so let's get through those together. Up next is Leghorn, which is another fake out song where you think you're about to get the heaviest metal riffs ever, but that is interrupted by these derpy, clean guitar tones that sound like boop, boop, or something like that. But then those derpy, clean guitar tones just make way to this bad funk bass line. And of course, we do still get metal on this song, considering this album is just literally the craziest acid trip ever. And of course, those space lasers are being utilized once again in the guitar solo. Overall, it's a really interesting track. You should check it out. I don't know how to explain it. I think my brain has become mush at this point, but I'm staying strong for the last song on the album. Last but not least, we have Scrape the Dirt Off, which starts out with this really interesting guitar solo, which I can't tell if it's utilizing Buckethead's kill switch or a tremolo effect. And that interesting guitar solo that lasts only about 5 to 10 seconds makes way to some of Buckethead's most fast-paced slap bass playing on the album. I'm rapping. I'm literally spitting bars over here. The percussion throughout the song is very interesting and experimental. You've probably guessed that at this point. And the outro for the song is very interesting, especially when you compare it to the outro of the first Pike, It's Alive, considering that first Pike had this really echoed and reverberated eerie guitar strum. It felt like a nice way to close out that album, whereas this one, we get this weird descending bass line and drums that go immediately to the end of the song. It feels like the album almost never truly ended, which somehow is an amazing outro for an album like this that we just talked about being such an experimental piece of work. I don't know anymore, man. My brain is mush. Let's bring this to a close. Overall, if you're a big fan of experimental music, then I highly recommend this album over here, because it is beyond experimental, one of the most experimental albums I've listened to as of late. And this experimental side is one of the reasons I love Buckethead's Pike so much, is because sometimes you do get records like this where it almost feels like you're awake in the middle of a brain surgery, or it feels like you're stuck in isolation with nothing around you and you're on like massive amounts of drugs or something. So yeah, Go listen to it. Anyways, that's going to do it for the second Pike, Empty Space. The next Pike I cover will be the third one. I know it seems like I'm going in chronological order, but I view these first few Pikes as some of the most important of the Pike series from Buckethead. So I will have a video of 3-foot clearance coming soon. For my next video, I'm going to be taking a little break from the Buckethead Pike series and talk about the 30-year anniversary edition of 12 Golden Country Greats by Ween. Ween is one of my favorite bands, and 12 Golden Country Greats was never really my favorite album by them. But with some of this new music, I'm finding quite a love for it. But for now, go and listen to Empty Space by Buckethead. And then when you're done with that, go and listen to some of my music as well. But yeah, that's going to do it for me. Thanks for signing in to Pyramidian. Pyramidian signing out.